I need to tell you something. When I first learned about retirement money and what makes it actually safe, I got it completely wrong. Not slightly wrong. Completely wrong. I spent years thinking one thing, while the reality was something else entirely. And the strange part? Almost everyone makes the same mistake I did. Hit subscribe if you want the stuff nobody tells you, because I have a lot more where this came from. Everyone tells you to focus on the size of your nest egg. Build it bigger. Stuff more into it. Watch it grow. But here's what they've gotten backwards. It's not about how big the pile gets. It's about whether that pile actually does what you need it to do when you stop working. Because a big pile that can't pay your bills reliably is not safe. And a smaller pile that's structured right can feel like a fortress. Safety is not size. Safety is structure. And almost nobody is teaching you the difference. Let me explain what I mean by that, because this is where everything starts to shift. Most people walk into retirement looking at the wrong asset. They look at their savings, their investments, their accounts, the number at the top of the statement. And those matter, absolutely. But there's another asset hiding in plain sight, one that most people never properly value. It's the income that doesn't depend on the market. The money that shows up whether the stock market is up or down, whether the news is good or bad, whether the economy is roaring or limping. Most people have more of this hidden asset than they realize. They just don't know how to see it. They've been trained to stare at the balance and miss the stream. Think about that for a second. You've probably spent 30 or 40 years being told to watch one number. Watch it grow. Watch it climb. Compare it to benchmarks. And in the process, nobody ever sat you down and said, by the way, there's a whole other side to your financial life that matters just as much, maybe more. The side that keeps flowing. The side that doesn't care what the market did yesterday. That side is real. That side is valuable. And once you finally see it, the picture of your retirement changes completely. Here's where the math gets interesting. Most people do their retirement calculations completely backwards. They start with how much they've saved, then try to figure out if it's enough. They plug their number into a calculator, watch some scary projection come out the other end, and walk away either anxious or falsely reassured. But the real calculation should start somewhere else entirely. It should start with your actual life. What does it cost to live the way you want to live? Not the magazine version, not the cruise brochure version, the real version of your real days. Then, and only then, you work backwards to see what supports it. Because when you do the math this way, something surprising happens. The target moves, and it's often closer than you ever thought. Now here's the shift that changes everything. Stop thinking about retirement as an endpoint, a finish line, a date on a calendar you cross, and then collapse. Start thinking about it as a transition into something different. Different rhythm, different income, different priorities, different choices about your time and your money. And once you see it as a transition rather than a cliff, the planning becomes clearer, the decisions become simpler, and the fear that comes from uncertainty starts to fade. Because fear loves the unknown, and the more you understand, the less unknown there is. Let me paint a picture that might sound familiar. You're someone who's been diligent. You've saved consistently for years. You've followed the advice, made the contributions, opened the right accounts, done the things you were supposed to do. And now you're looking at your number and something doesn't feel right. The number is respectable. Your friends would say you're doing well. But inside, there's a nagging feeling that something is missing. You're not sure if it's enough. You don't feel the peace you expected to feel by now. You wake up some nights and run the math in your head, and the math never quite settles. Sound familiar? This is where most careful savers end up, with a number that looks good on paper but doesn't feel secure in real life. And the reason it doesn't feel secure is not because the number is too small. It's because nobody ever showed you how to translate that number into the only thing that actually matters in retirement, which is steady, dependable income. Or maybe your situation looks different. Maybe you've had a long career with some bumps along the way. Maybe you didn't save as much as the magazines say you should have. Maybe you're staring at your accounts thinking, this is not what the experts told me I'd need. But here's what you might have that nobody is counting for you. Years of Social Security contributions that have built up a benefit waiting for you. Maybe a pension from an old employer you almost forgot about. Maybe a spouse's income to consider. Maybe a home that's mostly paid off, or fully paid off, sitting there as quiet equity. Your situation doesn't look like the success stories in the glossy retirement magazines. But when you look at the actual monthly income picture, when you finally see the full story, it might look a lot stronger than you've been giving it credit for. Here's the key insight, and I want you to really hear this one. The difference between stress and peace isn't the size of your account. It's whether you understand what your income actually looks like. Read that again in your head. The size of the account is not the source of the peace. The clarity of the income picture is the source of the peace. Two people can have identical balances and live entirely different emotional lives in retirement, simply because one of them understands their income flow and the other one is staring at a number they don't know how to use. Let me give you an analogy that I think will stick. Imagine your retirement finances like a thermostat in your home. Some parts of your financial picture act like the thermostat itself. They keep the temperature steady, no matter what's happening outside. Social Security, a pension if you have one, certain kinds of fixed income annuities, these are your thermostat features. They keep things stable. They don't care if there's a blizzard or a heat wave. They just hold the room at a comfortable level. Other parts of your finances act like opening a window. Your investment accounts, your stock holdings, your equity funds. When the market gets crazy, these feel it directly. They get cold when the world gets cold. They get hot when the world gets hot. Most people focus entirely on what happens when they open the window. They obsess over the weather outside. But the real comfort in retirement comes from how well your thermostat is set. If your thermostat is doing its job, you can crack a window now and then and not panic when the wind blows. That is what financial safety actually looks like. Here's something to remember as we keep going. The goal isn't a big number. The goal is a steady life. Keep that with you, because that one sentence rearranges everything you've been taught. Now, let me give you another way to see this. Think about planning your retirement expenses like making a grocery list. You could make a list based on what you think you should be eating. All the healthy stuff, the premium items, the aspirational groceries you see in the cooking magazines. Or you could make a list based on what you actually eat, what you actually throw away because it went bad in the fridge, what actually makes it onto the table at dinner time. Most retirement planning uses the aspirational list. It assumes you'll spend like the brochure says you'll spend. It assumes the cruises and the kitchen remodels and the constant flights to see the grandkids. But the real budget, the one your real life lives in, that's based on the actual list. And when you use the real list, the number you need is often surprisingly different from the one everyone throws around at dinner parties. Here's where this gets even more interesting. Think about your retirement money like a river. When the river is moving forward, when everything's flowing nicely, it's easy to think you don't need to pay attention to the current. The water carries you. The trip feels easy. But here's what happens. If you hit a rough patch early in retirement, if the market dips right when you start drawing down your money, that early damage can be very hard to recover from. It's like the river. A strong current early on can push you far off course, even if things smooth out later. That's why the timing of your early withdrawals matters more than most people realize. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the sequence of your returns matters enormously. A bad decade at the start of retirement is not the same as a bad decade at the end. The same average return tells two completely different stories, depending on when the bad years happen. This is the kind of thing nobody mentions when they hand you a calculator and tell you you'll be fine. I want you to hold on to this thought. Most people are not broke. They're just confused. There's a big difference. And the confusion is not your fault. It's the result of a financial industry that spent decades training you to focus on the wrong scoreboard. Let me give you one more way to see this. Imagine you're standing outside and someone offers you 2 umbrellas. One umbrella is small but reliable. It covers you in light rain. It won't break. It works every single time you open it. The other umbrella is huge, flashy, covers a massive area, looks impressive in the store. But it only works when the weather is perfect. In a storm, it flips inside out. In bright sun, it's awkward and gets in the way. Most people grab the big umbrella because it looks impressive. But the person who chose the small, reliable umbrella, they're the one who stays dry when it actually matters. Your guaranteed income sources, your Social Security, your pension, if you have one, your reliable fixed income, that's your reliable umbrella. Your investments, your equities, your speculative holdings, that's the flashy one that sometimes fails you at the worst possible moment. Both have a role, but you need to know which is which. And you need to make sure you have enough of the small, reliable one to handle the storms. It's not about doing more. It's about understanding more. I want you to really sit with that line. So much of what you've been told assumes the answer is always to do more. Save more. Earn more. Push harder. Worry more. But the real breakthrough for most people in retirement is not more action. It's more clarity. The information you need isn't complicated. It's just different from what you've been told. Before we go deeper, the thing I'm about to explain is what most people miss entirely. Pay attention to this one, because here's where the conversation about market volatility gets honest. When you were working and saving, market volatility was actually your friend. A drop in the market meant you were buying shares on sale. The ups and downs averaged out over decades. You had time. You had income coming in. The volatility was a feature, not a bug. But once you flip into retirement, once you start pulling money out instead of putting it in, that same volatility becomes a totally different animal. Now, a down market doesn't mean a sale. It means selling shares at a discount to pay your bills. It means locking in losses to put gas in the car. The exact same volatility that helped you build wealth can quietly drain it once you start drawing from it. This is why retirement is not just the back half of working life. It's a different game with different rules. And the people who do well are the ones who finally see that and adjust accordingly. You might be closer than you think, but you won't know until you look at the right numbers. And the right numbers are not the balance at the top of your statement. The right numbers are your monthly income floor, your monthly real expenses, and the gap between them. Now let's talk about something nobody likes to talk about: healthcare. I'm not going to pretend this part is fun, but here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Healthcare costs in retirement are real, but they're not the boogeyman the industry sometimes makes them out to be. Yes, you should plan for them. Yes, they tend to rise faster than general inflation. Yes, there will be costs Medicare doesn't cover. But the answer is not to panic. The answer is to build a rough estimate into your monthly picture, understand what Medicare does and doesn't cover, and stop letting vague fear drive your decisions. The fear doesn't come from not having enough. It comes from not knowing what you have. And in healthcare specifically, the fear is multiplied because most people have never sat down and actually looked at the numbers. Then there's housing. Your home is probably your largest asset, and it sits in this strange in-between space. It's not really income. It's not really a stock. It's a roof and a savings account and a memory all at once. The decision about whether to stay, downsize, sell, rent, take out equity, that decision is enormously personal and enormously financial at the same time. And there is no single right answer. But here's the question almost nobody asks. Does my house help my income picture, or does it just sit there? Because a paid-off home reduces your monthly expenses dramatically, which raises your income floor effectively, which is the same as having more income. A house you can't afford to maintain does the opposite. So you have to look at your housing honestly, not sentimentally, when you're putting the retirement picture together. Here's why this matters. Once you see the full picture, the decisions become clearer and the fear gets smaller. That's not a hopeful slogan. That's a pattern I see again and again. Let me talk about inflation for a minute, because this one quietly changes the math in ways most people don't appreciate. Inflation doesn't feel like much in any single year. 2% here, 3% there, an occasional spike. No big deal. But over 20 or 30 years of retirement, inflation is one of the most important forces in your financial life. The money you need at 75 is going to look a lot bigger than the money you need at 65, just to buy the same groceries, the same gas, the same medicine. So when you're building your income floor, you have to think about what's protected against inflation and what isn't. Social Security has cost of living adjustments. Many pensions don't. A fixed annuity with no inflation rider pays the same dollar amount in year 20 as in year 1, but those dollars buy less. None of this is meant to scare you. It's meant to make you accurate. This isn't about optimism. It's about accuracy. I want to ask you something. Have you ever thought about what retirement would feel like if you actually trusted your numbers? Not hoped about them, not avoided them, actually trusted them. Most people have never had that feeling. And the reason isn't that the numbers are bad. The reason is that nobody ever helped them sit down and look honestly at the full picture. Now we get to the concept that ties this whole thing together. It's called the retirement income gap. Here's what it means in plain English. Add up every dollar of guaranteed monthly income you have coming in. Social Security, pension, any annuity payments, rental income, anything that just shows up. That's your income floor. Now add up what you actually spend in a normal month. That's your spending number. Subtract the floor from the spending. The difference is your gap. That gap is what your savings has to cover, month after month, for as long as you live. That's it. That's the whole equation. And once you know your gap, you know exactly what your savings is supposed to do. You stop comparing yourself to abstract benchmarks and start working with concrete reality. The real question isn't how much, it's how steady. You've probably heard about the 4% rule. Pull 4% of your portfolio in year 1, adjust for inflation each year after, and you're supposed to be safe for 30 years. Here's what people miss. The 4% rule is a starting point, not a finish line. It's a rough guide, not a guarantee. It was built on historical assumptions that may or may not hold. It doesn't account for your specific spending patterns, your specific tax situation, your specific health, your specific goals. Use it as a sanity check. Don't use it as a rule book, because real retirement is too personal for a single number to capture. Here's something to think about. The stress you're feeling about retirement might not be about your numbers. It might be about your framework. Change the framework, and the numbers often look entirely different, even though nothing about them has actually changed. This is why most retirement calculators give you a range instead of a certainty. They're not being lazy, they're being honest. The future has too many variables for anyone to hand you a precise answer. Market returns vary, inflation varies, spending varies, health varies, life varies. So instead of demanding a perfect prediction, the real skill is building a plan flexible enough to handle a range of outcomes. A plan with a strong income floor handles a wider range of outcomes than a plan that depends entirely on the market behaving. That's the whole point of focusing on income instead of just balance. Here's another distinction that's worth understanding. Income planning is not the same as wealth planning. Wealth planning asks, how do I grow my money? Income planning asks, how do I make sure money keeps showing up in my mailbox for the rest of my life? Both matter. But in retirement, income planning is the one that determines how you sleep at night. Most people have been doing wealth planning their whole working life and have never been taught the income side. And then they retire and wonder why they feel uneasy. The uneasiness is the wealth planning brain trying to do an income planning job. It's the wrong tool for the moment. Peace of mind isn't a luxury. It's a legitimate retirement goal. I really mean that. People sometimes feel guilty for wanting to feel calm about their money, as if it's selfish or unsophisticated. It is not. Peace of mind is a real goal. It's a measurable improvement in your quality of life. And it's built on understanding, not on hitting some magic number. Keep this in mind. Your retirement isn't someone else's retirement. That's why the general advice so often misses the mark. The numbers your neighbor needs are not the numbers you need. The lifestyle your coworker is planning for is not the lifestyle you're planning for. The income sources available to your cousin are not the income sources available to you. General advice can point you in the right direction, but only specific work on your own picture can actually move you forward. So, now here's what I want you to do with this information. Take this home with you tonight. First, write down every source of income you have coming in each month, no matter how small. Pension, Social Security, rental income, annuity payments, anything that shows up without you doing anything. That's your floor. Look at it. Really look at it. Most people have never written this number down in one place. Second, look at the last 3 months of your actual spending. Not what you budget for. Not what you wish you spent. What you actually spent. Bank statements, credit card statements, real numbers. Average them. That's your real spending number. Third, subtract your floor from your real spending. Whatever is left over, that is what your savings actually has to cover. Now here's the key, and this is the part most people skip. Don't compare that gap to some massive target number you heard somewhere online. Compare it to what you actually have in your savings. Ask whether your savings can reliably produce that gap amount month after month. Not spectacularly, not with home runs, reliably. Because if it can, you might be in a much better place than you realized. And if it can't, now you know exactly what you need to work on. You stop guessing and start working with a specific target. That is the whole exercise. That is the difference between worry and clarity. When you understand your income, when you understand your expenses, when you understand what your savings is actually supposed to do, something changes. The uncertainty doesn't disappear, but it shrinks. You stop chasing abstract numbers and start focusing on concrete decisions. You stop worrying about whether you have enough in some imaginary contest and start asking whether your specific picture covers your specific life. And that's the shift that matters. From confusion to clarity, from fear to confidence. From wondering if you're doing enough to knowing exactly where you stand. Because once you know where you stand, you can make decisions. And once you can make decisions, you can move forward. And that's what retirement planning is really about. Not perfection. Progress. Not a perfect number. A clear picture. You came in here maybe wondering if your retirement fund was really safe. Maybe wondering if you needed to do more, change everything, panic a little. And here's what I hope you're walking away with instead. The safety of your retirement isn't measured by the size of your fund. It's measured by how well your full income picture covers your real life. Your fund is one piece, an important piece, but just one piece. The thermostat features, the income floor, the gap, the framework, all of that matters just as much, maybe more. You don't need to be wealthy to be secure. You need to be informed. And now you have a clearer picture of what being informed actually looks like. If this gave you a clearer picture of your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even further.